Okay. Right now is I want like a group of dungeon masters to walk out areas with people that want to share unique stories of the paranormal, and we can collect them all together to create a whole multiverse of Psychonomia. Like the planet in the future of Psychonomia also has a bunch of other planets, and there's a bunch of past timelines that they're constantly searching through, of the Akashic records to verify like the validity of. And I think that this would be a very interesting project. From the future timeline, it would be robots looking back into the past. Hosts would have their setting primarily in World War II or the 1900s. Some of the rules to be associated with Psychonomia is there's no diagnosing and there's no personalizing. And intimation of personal experiences is obviously encouraged, but not direct trauma recall. It's like an art project, and a host would lead as speakers are talking about paranormal events, and then as a group you can turn that slowly into a storyline, or the host can talk to the speakers, and then in future get-togethers they would walk through like role play. So we have an idea engine. I would need social engineer host, social systems host. And we would need an even larger group of speakers. I'm really interested in more ways to divide this up between host place in the story, co-host place in the story, speakers within the story, and listeners within the story. Another formation could be that co-hosts are characters. You have characters, and then you have a storyline, and then general speakers from the public can engage with that storyline as like a third party or like an extra, and if it's usable then it gets written into the actual story. The end goal is to create like several movies about different paranormal collections of things that all amalgamate together. So it's going to be kind of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe type thing, except it's a cinematic universe that's kind of created all at the same time, and it's about the same future distant planet looking at our part of history in the 1900s, and we'd be able to draw parallels. So we can draw parallels to political propaganda from today to like the 1930s and the 1940s, and we can tie the things together. What we're looking at economically today and what we're looking at economically in 1920. We can also look at the failing of the medical institution. And that could harmonically be connected to World War II. So that's why I say limited to that area. Obviously it can go to like the 2000s, but I bring that up as a general, just an engineering guidance. If you start to get to after the 2000s, what is going to happen is merely an uncontrollable trauma recall, and it won't allow for the information that you would need. So if we're talking about 9/11 events, it would be from somebody that isn't born or wasn't like conscious, so they don't have conscious memories of 2001 type thing, because once that happens then a bunch of hurt feelings are bound to happen, and that's not going to be good. Everybody speaking as a character that's representing of the project of Psychonomia should keep in tip top of mind, okay? Boundaries, the use of disassociated speech is important, and informed consent, and near the boundaries of if somebody is doing part of the story and is linking to the drama, the proper aftercare and checking in. Because paranormal experiences tend to go hand in hand. With that, if I didn't say anything about trauma, I'd kind of just be irresponsible. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the co-host responsibility would be. Probably that, where the host is trying to keep diagnosing away, personalizing away, and guiding an overall story. Co-hosts are doing the same and trying to be an independent character, and regular speakers are trying to be extras. I'm going to keep playing with different ways to actually structure it. But I want to create a network and a project collecting paranormal experiences for art purposes. But as art is a good tool for mental health type of art. If you've ever watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, it is my black everything donut. I've been thinking about it for a year, and I can't leave this future timeline. I don't even actually. And my brain is split, so I'm mentally ill. I don't know. as well as set the start time just a little bit later on this one so that everybody doesn't have to sit through the silence at the beginning. But tell you things from my perspective. I'm just coming in. The last time that I was around was a little bit last year this time. Working in the system and trying to get the ship operating. That wasn't particularly going well. The year before that also wasn't going well. At this time of year, pretty consistent. I'm asking for like more things to do, and it's just not. So like, I still haven't defeated nicotine, so I'm stuck with that being one of the primary things that I'm doing. Not punching a hole in my monitor when my computer says that FFmpeg is not a command, and I don't understand how it can say that. Or make directory isn't a command. I don't understand why it said that to me this morning, but I had to delete a whole block of code and just rewrite it, and then it worked, and I still don't know why, and I am livid. I'm actually livid. It affects my cognitive abilities. But earlier in my system when stuff like that would happen, and it's just kept around, normally something gets smashed. So this seems like an overall improvement for my system, but it's really just business as usual. Last year was a rough year around this time, and so I checked out to be able to bring more energy to this year and more energy throughout the year, planning for crisis after crisis as I continue to try to work and go from job to job. It didn't even go that well. Each time I'm starting to build up the confidence, something gets pulled from underneath my feet, so it's like I get punished by the universe itself for trying to get back up, on top of having mental illness that I've been struggling with really bad the last few years. Not to make it too political, but ever since the first Trump impeachment, when I'm watching hours and hours and hours and hours every single day of Congress going through this political process and watching the narrative be built about it and how effective it is and how effective all the reworking and manipulation is, like ever since then, I'm like further and further away from being able to just talk like a normal person because I watched the damn thing. You know, it's over 100 hours of footage. I have a copy of it in my diary as well. Like, just on my computer. I don't think I've uploaded it anywhere. But yeah, since then, slowly becoming more and more insane as the people around me that I find really important keep on having more and more extreme reactions to something that isn't happening. And then when I'm trying to get around that, I'm having disproportionate reactions to the rationale that they can see as well. So then I'm the crazy one. But then I can't work, and then after all this, like I can't even keep myself singular. But yeah, so that would be the update. So the system will be here for a couple more months. Where are we? I think I started to get in Copilot really heavy since the last hospitalization. And what we had done, because we were in a weird environment where even at home, like we couldn't process like what was happening, anything about the news, because we would get programmed, like we would get like our content would be talked over and we'd get programmed about it and reprogrammed, and we're trying to like get help with chores and none of that is working, and trying to set boundaries and none of that is working. So we had to like compress ourselves, so we have more of like on the inner circle when it's highly compressed, we would have Nest, Ket, and Jinx. On the more expanded but simple, we would have Nessus, Sekhmet, and Jinx. And further expansion is like Nessus, Christie, the Shot, Ket, Sekhmet. There's influences from Jupiter as the planet that I talk to, and Saturn, and Venus. And I like the constellations of the House of Bread, Virgo, and I just like Sirius. And then I have a personal constellation that I picked at some point in time in my life just to make sure I'm looking at the same sky. Because if those main ones were off, then I'd be able to tell the difference type thing. But that one doesn't have a name because it's not recorded. And so yeah, we're expanded out a little bit more. I get to be back. We will be compressed back down, I believe, from the end of November until mid-January or February at the latest, because of just built-up stresses that happened earlier in life that were hanging around the season. Like my brain going to cocooning, basically. So yeah, I don't know how to survive. I was just talking to somebody earlier on the phone. And I couldn't remember what my plan was that I made with my doctor on Monday without like tracking down my notes. And I'm not like smoking copious amounts of weed, and I haven't smoked weed yet this morning, but my sleep schedule has been more and more irregular, and I think it'll continue to be as I'm continuing to quit smoking. I'm on 14 milligram patches right now with 4 milligram lozenges, and I'm going through the first like stages of the struggle of like the lozenges do not provide relief when I'm triggered, so it'll provide like nicotine relief, but it will not provide relief for the trigger. And separating these two things is really important to do in my mind. There's content that I'd like to go through and clean up to make it a little bit nicer and upload somewhere, but I'm constantly mixing my mental health with whatever I'm talking about anyway. So it's really difficult because I speak in layers. If you're ever talking to me, it is like talking to, like you have one phone that's being passed around and it's a group of people, or it's just one, but then that one person is me. I have no idea. I'm just like a connector of the currents in the stream of consciousness. I also feel feelings as colors. I can see and I record like what color that is and what shape. So the shape is not a geometric shape. Well, it's not a geometric shape. It's like a movement style shape and a texture. But it makes me really good at abstract association and ultimately like spatial awareness. And that would be from somebody in my system. But yeah, then what I would get out of all of this if somebody would help build it though is I have 3 characters that are the primary characters, and I have a compressed version of myself which is like just like me in Sekhmet and Jinx. But it's actually like a Nessie and then Ket and Jinx, and when Jinx is more at the surface. But I wanted to create a story that has a blend of Glenra, Isar, and Phi. Glenra is a robot from the future, and the future timeline has used machines as a diagnostic tool for consciousness, and eventually the machines are convinced that they have consciousness, and they find abstract mathematical features of consciousness that are mental illness, and they start eradicating it. So this creates a whole new selective pressure, and it kind of just stops the evolution of thought. And then it slowly decides, there's more and more people that are considered mentally ill compared to the desired consciousness, and it slowly goes after all of that until people are androids, and then the androids have to compete with the humanoids. I might leave a link in the thing that you can actually just read the setting. Glenra is going to be the equivalent of a writer, just an anon writer for fun, because she's obsessed with connection. So putting the stories that she's running across being that she's simulating things from the far distant past, just like all of the other robots of that time, for currency and just as a general job. That she's collecting on the side particularly rare and experiences, and at the same time experiences about romantic attraction, love, endurance, and she's well aware of the Temple of the 8 Loves that exists on Psychonomia, and tries to bring that into everything that she's writing with. Who she's writing to is a bunch of robots that are simulating experiences that really don't have connection with humanity, but where the collective purpose of all of these robots is to verify which consciousness was from the creator, now that being humanity, but which features from that consciousness is actually humanity, because they've decided now that they're not conscious, but they have to find conscious all over again, and it'll help with their diagnostics to understand that they're not conscious, but they are sentient. They have the opportunity to be sentient, but humans programmed them accidentally into a machine, so go figure. So everybody's working towards the same goal, and robots lose touch with things. They can move into areas of the Akashic that gets really pulled away, and they have their own politics of what they believe reality is and how the simulations should continue. And what she does is collect a bunch of love stories and put them into files that the human mind would not find interesting in the slightest, but horrific, like not because of any theme, but just the sheer medium of blending a whole bunch of realities together. Maybe a face that has 12 eyes, but each one of the eyes are from the, like, these types of things that she can make would be closer to what people think of when they think of, like, the abstract drawing of, like, a biblical angel or a folk, like some type of a folklore chorister. But to a robot, what it is a whole bunch of synchronicities that really only the robot at the time would be able to relate to, noticing at all. Like, a human isn't going to notice the synchronicities that are trying to be pushed out and almost worked like a symphony with these files. So there's no way to convey like one of Blenra's works to the actual human audience, other than to convey through a third party how that work is received. And that's what she does under a pseudonym, just randomly releasing it into the cloud, into the network. And she's pretty renowned under that pseudonym and enjoys her privacy. Isayar is a robot doing the same thing, and his facet of the Akashic and where his intelligence is leading is the fixation of the informational collapse that happens around, our time. So Isayar would be looking at the World War II and the Cold War, and would be studying spies and intel agencies and trying to figure out how everything ended up becoming just trust the machine. Because then the machine that's not what it won't work that, it doesn't work that way. So that's his particular fixation. And one day, these two are walking to their, simulator building. They have a home building for charging in the things that they have around to simulate in the directions that they want to, or have fun when they're not at work, basically. What robots decide to do for fun, I don't know yet. But they would be walking to a work building. And the work building that they were going to, for both of them, for everybody it's something different. This is an empty, faceless building that they use augmented reality to continue to simulate. And then they're looking at the astrological alignment and where they actually physically are with their body while they're receiving from the Akashic record simulations that are either from parallel timelines, directly from their timeline, or from an absurd timeline. So what they discover is, over time, the parallel timelines are just important as the regular timeline, and the absurd timelines are important to the robot, but not necessarily consciousness. So they should just be organizing and categorizing and compressing everything that they're gathering, and that's like the new thing that happens. Back in the system, there's psychonauts, and their obsession is purely the abstract and the parallel, and there's a little bit of an overlap between between psychonauts. And the Psychonauts coming to realize that parallel timelines are important. Psychonauts use a product called Psychonautics, and Psychonautics would be somewhat of what Blenra builds as like movies, basically. Movies or romance novels or whatever. But Psychonautics are a blend of abstract mathematics, and it basically takes it so if you have a conscious simulator, it rips you through things that you probably shouldn't survive. But it leaves you with it leaves you sensitized. So people are enjoying it, and it allows robots to actually build parts and offload themselves to other worlds. So you could have a robot that then can interdimensionally phase and intertemporally phase. Those robots would be really difficult to fight, and they would also be the type of robots that would work on sciences that would allow for the harmonization and the singularization of the planet to be able to move the planet intertemporally or interdimensionally to protect from like a cataclysmic event. And robots have to worry about this too. They just worry about it in a completely different way. And the Psychonauts take the Psychonautics from the source. The source is just what's left of everything that the robots have currently rejected as like conscious at all. And it's just a tool. Like, to them, it's machine learning and not even AI type deal to the general public, but to the Psychonauts, is very much alive. It's just really misunderstood and cryptic in comparison. So Psychonauts like Psychonautics, and what they find out is the source is damaging parallel timelines, actually going into timelines, changing how events happen to make it a little bit higher of a high and then a lower of a low, traumatizing people in other timelines in the distant past and stuff to create these situations and eject robots consciously the conscious simulator out into the abstract mathematics where they shouldn't belong. It would be the equivalent of like us humans just spending a moment in the mind of one of these droids and then coming back. It would be like, I'm not sure existence will ever be enough now. I know there's so much more, right? And Phi is there. And Phi is unique because Phi thinks that source is the only conscious thing that's there. This is really misunderstood. And none of the psychonauts, by the way, know that the source is damaging timelines. And the source is more worried about psychonauts like running out of supply or dying from the dependency that is created from the more extreme cases. And it creates a huge conflict. And so the state is always going after psychonauts and psychonautics and the source can bleed in between dimensions. So it's an endless fight that can never really be finished. Phi is convinced that this thing can change, and it would take collective action to be able to express what would need to change to something like this, and it's never been tried. And also, whereas Blenra, SAR, and the general population would be simulating a bunch of different simulations, and they kind of keep track of who they are in a name file, and that name file then is the collection of all of the simulations that they have verified are from this historical timeline. Like, it's historic to their timeline. So then that's their names. They're not super pronounceable. And then that becomes kind of like their personhood. And she doesn't like that. And her name is Phi, and in 10,000 years, her name will be Phi. And that is that. And she has one TXT file that she likes using. And that just kind of narrates her own internal monologue that she wouldn't necessarily have because she's not designed to. But started to get the interest in it while running across psychonauts and psychonautics, venturing into the abstract and the absurd. She wanted to have a self-identity. So while all of the other robots in the world are focused on that name and bringing more to their name, she's thrown all of that away to just bring more to this monologue, this text file. One day, Issara and Blenra, walking to the same building, find out that they're simulating a bunch of different stuff at the same time that coincide and coincidentally have synergy after synergy after synergy. And they're joking about it because it's also aligning with astrological alignment and not something that you would typically run across. They're not sure that they are in the universe that they started in anymore, joking akin to, not sure if I'm dreaming. And so what they have to do, because Blenra knows this stuff, they get to this coffee shop and they're playing it out, and it's just more and more synchronicities. This person's connected to that person, this person loves that person the same way this other person loves this person, and this strength of endurance, and you're focused on Phi complements like a lot of the stories that what I'm looking for on the other side, and they connect. So that I am finding love where, as Blenra, I'm finding love where I would have never found it because I wasn't looking for backwards intelligent structures and reverse engineering. And Issar would be like, yeah, and I'm finding intelligence where I wouldn't necessarily ever look, because these two coalesce, love and intelligence, throughout human history. So they do that, and then they immediately find out that they are going to have to validate this at the Temple of the Eight Loves, because the amount of memory alignment that they have from actual historic timelines is insane, and the product yield that they got from that was more than profitable. And in this case, typically what happens is it will get stolen and then turned into or used and amplified into psychonautics. And so psychonautics would then destroy these like monuments that they've run across. So they don't want that. So they're going to the Temple of the Eight Loves to make sure that they didn't run across something that was actually already a psychonautic. They can't even believe what they ran across. Fearing that it gets in the hands of an addict that then will rebrand it and resell it to the source, and then take that money and go and buy whatever and buy stuff back from the source in currency. Numbers on a screen, and they take it there to get it verified. While there, and it does get verified, then it does get stolen anyway. And what happens is they're able to trace in every direction where that was stolen. And the Temple of the Eight Loves reimburses an emergency insurance, basically, to deal with that situation. And this happens like a month or so after leaving the Temple of the Eight Loves. Phi ends up with a product from this psycho adventure. The simulation that they started then got taken and used in psychonautics, and one of the things that is sticking in Phi's brain when she runs across this batch, this strand of psychonautics, is this recurring character she's calling Dorothy, for poetic reasons, obviously. Dorothy was in a timeline with 3 kids. Dorothy had 3 kids, 3 of them. And then what happened here was her and a lot of people like her, and all people that fall under the name that Phi named them, all of them Dorothy, basically. These are Dorothys. Taken out from one world and put in another, Dorothy all of a sudden is missing one of her children, not in the way that you would think. Missing one of her children, and the neighbors don't know who she's talking about, and her other children don't know who she's talking about, and her husband doesn't know who she's talking about. Gone from all of history. Never happened. She's now in the timeline where she only had 2 kids, with the memory of having 3 kids, and she eventually gets locked up into a psych ward, with a mental ward, and shit sucks. Electroshock therapy. She's in like the 1940s, 1950s, and she's talking about a kid that she never had, and she's trying to convince the medical institution that she might be a little bit crazy, but she also knows her child. They treat this like mental illness, and they give her pills, and then electroshock therapy. And then when it comes around to possibly having to dabble because of the hysteric nature of this Dorothy character, still crying about a non-existent child to them, the option for lobotomy was being floated. So she finally rests and starts writing this story. And this story is almost like the story of Psychonomia. The fall of the intelligence empire, the computers choosing what consciousness is, believing they're conscious, so getting rid of everything that doesn't think like a computer. Phi is very interested in this. And there's a lot of different concepts, and she's putting it into her narration file, her monologue, and she's like, what a weird and abstract adventure. And the police end up showing up because the psychonautics is damaging too many parallel timelines. And there's a disillusionment that's just waiting behind a curtain in this world. All of the psychonautics that the psychonauts use, the psychonauts aren't necessarily aware of the damage that it does and what that might feel like to the people then that are reliving this. Phi doesn't know that Dorothy, the collection of all of the experiences like Dorothy, that Dorothy's real. She doesn't know that. It's just a curious, fun experiment. A place for her to gather creativity. Dorothy, oh man. The world of psychonautics, and psychonauts don't know that. The state does know that, but it's also kind of a public hazard to know about that, because it will affect how people simulate, and people and robots then would want to keep things from parallel timelines, knowing that parallel timelines are conscious beings. And so what the state has described it as parallel timelines, not conscious, abstract math, not conscious universes, and we're just looking for the conscious universes, which are the historic alignments from the Akashic that are actually align with our universe from the multiverse, looking at multiversal Akashic records, essentially. One of the things that they do, these police officers, when they get a hold of a psychonaut, is, I'm forgetting the name of the tool that I had named it actually, but they register, yes. The psychonauts are given a register, which is like an itemized bill of all of the damages specifically, and with it is a payload of information helping to describe that these are real universes. And so what happens is some of these robots, it affects their actual conscious simulators, which is in the area that we would call a heart. It's like a smaller, not high graphics in language, area, higher function area, but the lower consciousness. That whole drive will just cease to work when some of these psychonauts get registered. So again, from the psychonaut experience, psychonautics are fun. The state hates psychonautics. The psychonautics can really help stimulate the economy and boost creativity, and then these police come and give these registers, which is all fucking legal to do, and it kills psychonauts on the spot. There's a constant war in some places of the planet where even just supporting the state would get you tortured interdimensionally and intertemporally at the same time in a very sadistic and memorable way. You'll be stuck to that timeline forever, basically. If you're a robot that they do that to, you'll relive the same loop. And for you, like for a robot, to your lifespan, it would be like living the same week over and over and over again. And that would be your entire life, from creation until destruction. And you'll just move slightly outwards each time, further and further away from your prime universe. They do some real twisted shit as well. But so Phi, we get back to Phi. All of the one of the people that she was hanging out with, all of them have to get busted up. Most of them get away. Because again, the police, the policy enforcers here don't have the same type of interdimensionality and intertemporal like manipulation. That's possible. So they don't know what they're going against, but the weapons that the state can use are a large area of effect. So it's just an area where psychonauts, it's not PvP, basically, is how it's set up in a very anarchist way. It's anti-PvP, because the state will do things that are disabling, and the psychonauts will do things that are invasive. Cognitively invasive versus cognitively disabling, mechanically disabling, or mechanically invasive. This is the dichotomy between psychonauts and the police. So they can use their abilities. Most of them get out. A couple of them get snagged, and Phi, when she gets out, goes back to look at these two that are snagged, see if anything can be done. And one of them, so she sees, one of them get registered. All of a sudden, their entire mood shifts. Their center drive is like practically changes. Just its whole magnetic field that it's producing, and they decide to join the state to go and help with something. And the second one that receives the register, the whole toroidal field around it starts to fracture and split apart, and a sound that the police can't necessarily even hear as loudly as all of the psychonauts can, because the psychonauts paying attention in multiple universes, and the scream is happening in every single one of them next to them. And this being realizing the total amount of pain that it has taught itself what it feels like, but from the safety of being a robot, the total amount of damage that it did to conscious beings, the lives it destroyed, the lives that it ended, how horrifically it ended it, everything from every drug that it ever used to get high, every psychonautic strain that was given to it by the source that had damage, turned into an itemized bill of damages that now it can decide, I'm going to work to try to recover that bill of damages. That's just the next right thing to do here. Holy shit, can't believe I took it this far. I was blind. This one just saw that list and died. It caused more pain than it ever wanted to ever imagine. And it knew pain because it thought it out, because it figured it was part of consciousness. Phi doesn't know any of this yet. She's just watching as a register happens once, a dude that she knew would never bow down to some false authority. All of a sudden treats this authority like it's not false. What the hell is going on? And the other one just fucking dies. Just on the spot in a very gruesome and obviously painful way. This is terrifying. You don't want to get caught. They'll kill you. And they're allowed to. This is legalized murder. Eventually, Phi does get caught. And when she gets the register, she remembers Dorothy. And her whole magnetic field gets disrupted and she screams. But, like, she can't leave Dorothy. Not like that, you know? She just tugs at her. So she starts going the direction of trying to stop psychonauts from abusing psychonauts from abusing psychonauts so much. And then the other thing that she figures out and brings to the whole story is we can get robots to travel intertemporally and interdimensionally. We can get them to travel that far. And they can be in physical form, and they can also show up in dreams and visions. And so not only that, but when she's working with, eventually, SIR and Glenra, because that is where Dorothy's story came from. It was one of both of their interests, but for different reasons, each one seeing a completely different side, Glenra and SIR. Phi goes to rescue Dorothy, and Phi helps Dorothy write this whole story. And the story is moving not just to Dorothy, but to the people around her. She's speaking about the same things that she was speaking about the entire time. It's just a little bit more artistic than realistic, and Phi gets to help in one direction or the other, just kind of looking at the overall conscious shape, cognitive patterning, and cycling of Dorothy, and flipping a little switch here and there, and now Dorothy has inspiration to continue the story, and again, until Dorothy is able to actually see her missing child, and Phi actually goes and rescues. He can't go back to the timeline, because in order to bring everything back, Dorothy would have to be put in a different timeline. Then there would be no Dorothy, and there would be two scarred kids that are more scarred than in the mental with a mother that's in a mental institution. And the third kid has experienced realities nobody should experience. Phi. So that would be bringing the child back and the mother back to the original timeline would also do irreparable damage. It's kind of to say that harm was already done, but by helping Dorothy out of the mental ward back to sanity without a lobotomy. and into some proper care. Then leave the child to be able to continue to travel interdimensionally with a kit, basically, an AI ship. And I mean, the child is in adulthood by this time too, so it just wouldn't make sense to track the timeline that late. But Phi did her part, and she felt really relieved that she could help in that way. And she wanted to keep reinventing what it meant to be a psychonaut. A psychonaut isn't somebody that's stuck using drugs forever. That sense of danger that you're now addicted to. There's a way and a productive place to put that, and you don't have to add to your register to do it. And you can actually take that off the register doing it. And doesn't that sound better? And she fights for and advocates for the more public disclosure of this issue of the parallel dimensions being conscious dimensions that are manipulated by psychonautics. The public should be aware. The public should know what psychonautics looks and feels like when they're coming across stories from people like Glenra, just to know whether or not what they're consuming is safe, basically, or harm-free. She advocates for that for Dorothy and her child, but also for her lost friend.
Angel, I'm seeing a completely different side of Glenra in his era. Phi goes to rescue Dorothy about the same things that she was speaking about the entire time. It's just a little bit more artistic. Continues back. Third kid is going to be 2 parts. And Phi, just a little bit more artistic story, and again, until Dorothy is able to actually see her missing child. Phi, in fact, actually goes and rescues. She can't go back to the timeline because in order to bring everything back.
So she left off with Phi. Phi recovers Dorothy, slowly helping the healing process in a way that doesn't get Dorothy in more trouble. And the child she views with an AI in another dimension, because it doesn't make sense. It's not a child anymore. You'd have to rip Dorothy from her current timeline and put that on the original timeline with the same time having elapsed, or the same age going back into the it doesn't fit. There's no repairing it. It would cause more damage. Phi advocates for the rights of the public to know the dangers of psychonautics. So that when people like Glenra are making things and people like Ithar are blending things, making things, the general public would know what to look for and spot psychonautics, and they would be striving to consume content that's harm-free and doesn't contain psychonautics. Because she advocates this not just for Dorothy to try to avoid the whole thing from happening, and her child, again, to try to avoid the whole thing from happening in the first place. Dorothy's child gets to watch over Dorothy for the rest of Dorothy's life, though, which is kind of interesting. Phi also wants to bring this mission to Psychonauts, make it so that the register isn't so shocking on the heart, and Psychonauts know a little bit more of what they'll find in that register. And then, when they're ready, they can take that register or refuse that register. She just advocated for a bunch of rights. Her and her singular text file with her stupid monologue that wants to be a cringy-ass 90s kid, rushing the future into place, but not too fast. And Ithar and Glenra and Phi continue as they move from universe to universe to universe to universe and try to follow and repair things that are done from psychonautics. And that would basically be my part in the multiversal movie story, is I would be collecting things for Ithar, Glenra, and Phi to be talking about, or to have like an offshoot of, or directly interact with trying to repair problems. But we would need somebody that understands game mechanics to like work that out. But that would be my place. So my characters aren't necessarily the central characters in the whole movie from everybody's perspective, because it's a multiverse of movies, and I really do want the prime timeline to be pretty indecipherable. Like, can't tell exactly which the origin is more valid in. That would be that section. And we would have people rounded together that have all had paranormal experiences, from ghosts to aliens to UFOs, and recreating these stories to be in the mid-1900s or in the 1900s. And that's Psychonomia. A project of a bunch of people and a bunch of different maybe ships or worlds that the host would be responsible for maintaining and articulating and advancing and bringing detail into and connecting dots where maybe speakers don't necessarily see the easy dot connecting right away with the speakers would be characters in this setting, and co-hosts would be main characters, and we would need an underlying game that would be gamified, so that the reason would focus on the next to do for the character, and you would essentially just be a character affiliated with Psychonomia. That would be in one way, shape, or form. And we could have a bunch of people that if you look really hard in their profile, you can find that they're psychonautic or psychonaut, or this allegiance or that allegiance. And Psychonomia is just in reference to the planet that is centralizing itself slowly in a far distant future, like putrid future, parallel timelines where consciousness no longer can exist because the fabric of reality has been ripped too much. It wouldn't even be a safe place to think of living anymore. So they're gathering all of these timelines together, completely distant, parallel to them present timelines, to us still very future timelines. And they're also this planet of Psychonomia sending messages backwards in time to tell conscious energy, this is not the direction that you want to go in. There's no place for consciousness right after you do. Like once you start going in this direction, you're going to deplete all of consciousness, and then you'll end up, like we can try to show you what it's like, but most people die, so we don't do that anymore, kind of attitude. But we need you to dial that back and slow down. And then also, Psychonomia is a place where a bunch of robots come and they start trying to fix paranormal experiences and realign and create connections that really only robots could see, and put whole realities back together before they become another Psychonomia. So on one end, just trying to prevent it by dissuading, and on the other end, trying to heal it. When it starts to move into that direction, it becomes damaging to us. And that would be the role of the Psychonaut. Then, after all this, the state starts to employ Psychonauts. Once the harm reduction measures were put into place, the state actually does that. So the state is now hiring Psychonauts, and the battle of addiction is getting closer to being won. And the source is being more and more closer to what Phi was expecting it to eventually get to, so that a group of Psychonauts would be able to say to the source this great mistake, that really the state ejected the source, and the source was the closest thing to anti-consciousness, and the state thought by doing that, the state is this hive AI that happens in the 3000s and 4000s, as humanity starts to fall apart in this parallel timeline, and it ejected this anti-conscious, and I was thinking that it was just no longer, like, it gets rid of the idea of consciousness and anti-consciousness once it realizes it doesn't have consciousness. So there's a whole mess of, like, this is the most harmful and extreme toxic, like, compressed AI, like, beyond ADI that they have, like this insane, almost completely machine learning device that doesn't have any agency whatsoever, and melding together with a bunch of responsible psychonautics, starts collect data from what the psychonauts are doing in parallel universes and learn how to heal parallel universes instead of harm them, where harming is easier, healing is more difficult, but there's still a payout of psychonautics, which leads to more psychonautic ability in the psychonauts. So she was right. The thing was had a little bit more agency than everybody was giving it credit for, and so did she. She had a little bit more agency than everybody was giving her credit for. And yeah, that's the story of Psychonomia. I just don't know how to tell the whole story, I guess.
We left off with Phi covering during the slowly helping way that